Jennifer Farmer, and thank you for tuning into my Spiritual Insights podcast series. I hope you enjoy listening to these previously recorded broadcasts. My goal is to provide the most valuable information to bring you joy and happiness in your spiritual and personal development. You can follow me on Facebook, watch YouTube videos, and find scheduling information on my website at jenniferfarmer.com.
Welcome, everyone. My name's Jennifer. I'm so glad you could all be here tonight. It's wonderful. We have a group of people who want to change our life for the better. So I always think about what aspects of your life we want to change, because with focus and an understanding of what part of our life we want to change, we can easily begin to develop a strategy. Let's get the basics down when we're talking about changing our life. We're talking about our mental life, which means how we think about ourselves, how we think about others. Our physical life, which is how we feel physically, our physical body and how we relate to it. Our emotional life, which includes how we feel about ourselves and others. Okay? And then also, as we think about spiritual life, which is how we relate to our own inner power and relates to that God consciousness and God awareness. So take a moment and think about what area of life that you really want to make a change to. And that means your spiritual life, your mental life. What about your career? And career means how you contribute and use your abilities to be of service. Some of that you get paid for. Some of that may be volunteer basis. Then we look at our physical life, our emotional life. All of those things make up the whole spiritual being that we are. Remember, we're complex human beings, which means we got all of that. We got spiritual, mental, we got career, we got relationships, we got personal feelings and our connection to God. So I always encourage folks, if we start with the top, which means how we find our inner selves, that usually will start the initiation on how to change the mental life, how to change the emotional life, how we change our physical life, and how we begin to work our relationships on a higher, more loving and reflective basis. That doesn't mean all of our problems dissolve. It means how we come to our life problems begins to change. And as a result, they don't have the experiences, the struggles, in whatever that looks like, doesn't have the same intensity as it would if we did not have that reliance upon a higher part of us, a higher consciousness that is lovingly guiding us and watching over us. We all have it, whether we believe it or not. There is a consciousness, a loving presence within every human being and within beings in general, including animals and such. What we do is have the ability for logic as humans, which kind of sets us apart from the human form. So lots of good things. So when we're talking about changing our life, always really focus on what part is holiness that we want to change. So hopefully you've written a couple of things down, areas of your life, and I'll just kind of repeat that. How you feel about yourself and others, how you think about yourself and others, right? Kind of what's your attitude? Because let me assure you, our attitude always will be part of our experience. It may not be the whole experience, but how we address those. Our physical life, do we feel good in our pants or not? Is it time to make some changes, or do we need to put on weight? Some people struggle with keeping weight on, so it goes in both ways. Or are we fighting with our physical body, with physical issues? And I can relate to that. So we have some of those tonight. I have some things. All right, so as we get started, one of the first topics as I begin to start is letting go of the past. Whenever we think about letting go of the past, I always relate it to how things replay in our minds, how they old relationships that maybe did not work, but in our mind there seems to be a feeling or a connection, and we replay it in our mind. Sometimes we keep that consciousness of our past in our mind. And it's funny, I'm going to share a little bit about my personal family because that's the best way I know how to describe it. But have you ever been around a family member who, when you go with them, all they talk about is what happened 10 and 15 and 20 years ago? They wouldn't know the now if they hit it. It's funny because it's like they stay stuck. And I had an aunt that was always really good at, this is what happened to me. This is what, she had that whole concept. And mind you, I love my aunt, and she was a wonderful person to me. But as she related to other people in the family, I know that there were issues around that because she was never able to let things go. And that includes resentment, fear, pain, struggle, worry, all of this stuff that happens and the things she just sort of kept with her. So you might want to look at what scars of the past still crop up for you. I always think about this because as we begin to grow spiritually and we put that forward, it's going to be apparent when we are not focusing on how to move forward and change our life because we're always thinking about what happened yesterday. And for some of us that struggle with anxiety and fear, it's all about what's going to happen tomorrow. So first things first, when you've made a decision to change, let's say you want to change an attitude or a thought about somebody, or maybe you just want to change your overall feeling. Let's say you hate your job and you're not ready to leave, but you got to make the best of it. You got to notice when you're complaining about it in your mind. And when you do notice it, just be aware that there's something within you that feels like you're not being fulfilled and find ways to fulfill that. I talked to a lady today that was struggling with her boss because she's like, I don't trust my boss. I don't know if she likes me, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, have you thought about what you're looking for in your boss? Have you began to find that within yourself, which is recognition? And that means speaking up for those things about us. For example, I am a successful person. And having those affirmations, do you know how to count your own blessings? Or are you looking for other people to fulfill those? So first things first is always notice when you are not in the present moment and that your mind has drifted back to the past. And let's say you've got somebody that has done you wrong. Obviously, there's learning experiences from that, but always, as some philosopher said a long time ago, it's always good to keep friends close, but keep enemies closer. That doesn't mean we have to have them right in our presence and we don't have to have intimate relationships with them, but just be aware that we're going to deal with people that we don't get along with, that we don't have the same vibration with, that don't have the same values. And how do we operate in our world in the current moment and not let what happened 10 years ago keep us from having a loving, forgiving awareness, but also mindful that if they're trustworthy or not. One of the best things to do is to resolve old fears and feelings and grief is start to change the way you look at things. For example, and I'll kind of give you a heads up on, I'll share with you about one of my family members I did not get along with. When he walked in the room, he was the kind of man that made my hair stand up on the end. I didn't like him. He wasn't nice. He was mean. And the truth is, there was no way to change that. And so as I grew up, I had to avoid him in social settings. I didn't sit by him. I spoke cordial. I said hello, thanks. But in my heart, I just knew that this was going to be one of those relationships that when I go to meet, spirit, I want to be able to say he was kind of understand him. And so what I tried to see is, one, he was a lonely man. He never had any relatives in his life but my father. He never had any children. He lived as an alcoholic, and he was alone and depressed on a regular basis. And so I began to have compassion for him. That doesn't mean I wanted to be in the same room with him or have a relationship with him, but somewhere in my heart, I really wanted to find a way to accept him and still understand that he was a man that did not get his needs met. He did not feel loved. He did not feel supported. And because of that, he became a mean person. And so because of that, I was able to see him differently as a human being instead of sort of the monster in my mind that I'd created. So that's one of those relationships. He's in spirit now, but you'd be surprised. I'll dream about him, and then I'll wake up mad because I dreamed about him. But that's one of those conscious relationships that I have to let go of the past, because I had old thoughts and feelings where I blamed him for situations that really weren't his control. But as the outside looking in, I thought he had brought harm to our family. And the truth is, I didn't hold the people in my family that were responsible for their own behavior. I was looking for a scapegoat, and he was really easy for me to find. So keep that in mind. You might want to change the way you're looking at things. What have you learned from that experience? Avoid blame, because when we're blaming people, meaning that we don't hold ourselves accountable for how we think and feel about someone. Are we critical or are we judgmental? That doesn't mean we can't assess good character and have morals and have discernment on people that we want to have relationships with. I'm not saying that we have to let that part of us go, because that's a very important part of who we are as human beings. But how do we get beyond holding that, so that when we consider them, can we at least send them a loving thought? Always think about, when we're looking at letting go of the past, do you live like a person that is ready to move forward? Do you have enthusiasm about wanting to make changes in your life? If someone were to see you, like with a camera, and you weren't looking, what kind of consciousness would you be carrying? See what parts of the past that you don't want to carry in your forward. That's all I've got to say. If you've got relationships at home or at work, or an attitude about yourself or others, see what part that you're willing to let go of, and see how you can look at what you learned from it. It made you the person that you are today. There's obviously some strengths from it, and how do you overcome those and use that as your asset? An example would be, because I grew up in an alcoholic home, I always kind of giggle now, but, there's so many things that go with alcoholism in the family, and as far as dysfunction and how we relate to people and getting our needs met. And so when we're talking about changing our lives, I had to begin to see, what did that make me? It made me crazy psychic. You know why? Because I was always looking to see what was coming before I got home. And it's like I trained my psychic abilities to know, was it safe for me to go in the house or not? So just be aware that there's always something that we took from situations that either made us stronger, it made us more determined to be different than the people in our lives. It really set us on a way on what not to be like. There's always something that we can learn from our past. I'm going to go ahead and take a call real quick. If you'd like to talk about the past, or if you've got something that you're working on now based on that topic,
I have a very important question to ask.
I believe it's star 6. I'm going to go with it. One call
you
here.
talk about
I'm just going to wait for that. So I've got a little computer that shows me when you guys are coming on the board. But if you're struggling with the situation, let me know, and we can work on that.
Okay.
And if not, I've got a question that kind of
live my life.
refers
However,
to that. So let me go ahead and
looking into getting into school and trying to move on,
right,
but he gets out of prison next
Destiny,
year.
I see you. Hang on,
and that's kind of difficult to get through.
Hi, this is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Has he reached out to you while he's in prison?
In the beginning, people were actually warning me and stuff.
So what about now in the last 6 months?
The reason I know he's coming is because I have his other son.
I see.
Got out, he was going to come get us.
So that would be in our next topic of fear and anxiety. What I can share with you is that I personally have experienced violent people in my life, in my earlier life, that would call and threaten me, and they would say terrible things like, "I'm going to kill you." It was real clear. And I used to be afraid to go out in my car because they would say, this person would say to me, "You better be afraid to start your car in the morning. I know friends that will put things in your car and it will blow up." And so what I can share with you is that person is in prison today and will be for a very long time. But because that you're dealing with what I call some realities of how to care for yourself, what I would share with you is that I always took personal precaution, which means I'm going to live my life and not let that person steal from my life. But I do have legal recourses that I always took care of. I always made sure that people knew where I was at so that I could begin to not be motivated by fear. And all I can share with you is that with that particular experience, it's going to require more than just, I'm ready to move forward. It's that, how do I move forward, and, and how do I deal with him if he shows up at my doorstep? And that answer is real easy. That's always going to be 911. So when we're talking about plans and how to deal with fears and anxiety in this kind of situation, is I always, and the people that I've talked to that have dealt with violent people, is that there always is a game plan, meaning that I know how to take care of myself. I know how to call 911, and I'll do it on the drop of a dime and make sure that I know how to protect myself. You might even consider taking, classes that help you feel stronger physically, meaning on how to deal with that, like physical safety courses and things like that. I would encourage you to do whatever you can to do to feel powerful in your life, and also take the proper precautions when you're dealing with someone whose intentions are violent. Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The other piece is that just making the decision to move forward from an emotional standpoint and being determined to do that and taking action to follow that, but make sure you feel safe, make sure you feel protected, make sure that you know how to take care of yourself in a physical way. Those are actions that you can take so that you can be more assertive and not bow to power anymore and give him your power. Because quite frankly, whether people are violent or not, we as humans give our power away and let other people figure out based on their actions. We try to figure out how we're going to respond. And I'm saying take your power back. Learn what you can about dealing with volatile people, and also educate yourself on care tactics for you and your son. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in doing that, you're not letting fear take away from your life. You're still moving forward, but you're also learning how to physically take care of yourself. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. It's a difficult topic, but that is the reality of what happens. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Destiny. I appreciate that call. So just a couple of things. I'm going to move on to the next topic, which is, let's have a look. Oh, yes. Let me go here. Oh, fears and anxiety. I know that people, I think that one of the best things that I always do is try to recognize fear when fear crops up. And what I've always found is that if I'm fearful, if I'm afraid, and I'm frightened, and I have, I'm afraid, there's been times that I had a hard time paying bills. And I used to be afraid I wasn't going to be able to put food on the table. And what I know is that every day in my physical life, I have had what I needed. I may have not had what I wanted. So I have learned to talk to fears within myself to determine, are they realistic, or are they really just my mind trying to fix things that haven't happened yet? Because there's two things about fears and anxiety. One, I believe that fear is one of the biggest problems that we have on the human planet. I just do. I feel like it's something that if we don't learn to master fear and anxiety, it will steal from us and keep us from being from our highest self. And to really begin to deal with our fears, when we talk about fears of, are we going to have relationships? Fears, are we going to have a job? Fears for our physical health. Those kinds of realistic fears, that's our mind trying to figure out something that hadn't happened. So just be aware that when fears and anxiety, there's two things. One, we're worried about the past, or we're thinking about the future. One of the first steps is to realize that that's what you're doing. Are you a person that thinks about things that haven't happened yet? Are you someone that deals with anxiety? My son, he's 19. And he's had insomnia for years. And that's because he purposefully always worries about what's going to happen. He always thinks about his desires and what he wants, and he keeps him up at night. And he and I have really worked hard to help him deal with fears. He was, there was times when he was afraid to be anywhere else but in his own room. He still doesn't sleep in other people's houses today because he personally is only comfortable in his own house. So I always think about, what is it that can make you most comfortable? What is it that can make you face your fears? And how can you become aware when you're doing chronic habits that you can begin to avoid replaying your fears and projecting in the future? The biggest way to remove fear is to literally bring your awareness to the moment. So like right now, no matter what's going on in your mind, the only thing that's going on right now is we're all on this telephone call together. Right now, things are in a calm place because we are in the moment. We are in the present. And in the present moment, all things are exactly as they should be, right? So just get used to, if you're someone that struggles with fears and anxiety, there's an old friend of mine that she used to smoke now cigarettes. It was great. And she would have these little cigarette packages all over her house, and she'd say, I keep these on my what is that thing above the fireplace? On my mantle, just so that in case I get out of today, I start focusing on the now. Because that's where the presence, your presence, divine presence, and God is in the moment. And everything will always be okay in that moment. And I remember one time I had a guy stick up. I was getting out of my car. I was in Arlington, and I was going to a payphone in the 80s, and, he put a gun to my chest. He put a gun to my side. And he was like, me, of course, I start trying to talk him out of it. Now, what is it that you're doing here? What is it that you want, And, but through that time, even when times I probably shouldn't have been, I probably should have been afraid, it's like within me there was something that came up to let me know how to deal with that fear at that moment. So bring your awareness to the moment. Everything, if you kind of look at your life, do you have the things that you need today? Do you have a home? Do you have shelter? If you don't, do you have a place to go where you can stay with a family and friend? Do you have abilities to be resourceful and find food? Do you know how to take care of yourself? And we're talking about the basic needs. But my thing is when we're talking about fears and anxiety, and I really want to see people change and grab their potential, have you started dreaming about what your life could be like if you weren't afraid? One of the big things that people struggle with is fear of failure. And, why even try when I'm not even sure I can be successful? And I'm saying try anyway. There's a man that was close to me that he passed away of a heart attack, and he was doing what he loved. He was playing golf, and he went out and played golf, and he died right by his car. He had a heart attack. And it said life, and he said, I've got this little sign on my desk that says life's journey is not to arrive at the grave safely in a well-preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, totally worn out, shouting, holy shit, what a ride. And for me, that's kind of like my goal in my life is I want to reach the potential that's been put in me, that's the same thing that's been put within all of us, and I begin to develop a strategy for fear. If I'm afraid to be successful, I find people that are successful. If I am afraid to leave a relationship because of what it might happen, I seek out professional counsel until I am comfortable to leave that relationship. If I'm afraid to leave a job because I don't know what I'm going to do and that I don't want to be there anymore, I begin to tune into my higher self and find out what part of that job isn't working for me, why do I want to leave, and how can I move forward? Find out where your fear comes from. Get a plan of action to face it and overcome it. And you'll find that you're going to be productive. I know that Tony Robbins did a book. I think it's like The Giant Within. And he had this practice that was really great where you take a 10-day mental challenge where you have to promise yourself you're not going to dwell on anything afraid, and you're only going to be in the solution for 2 minutes. And if you're not, you have to start your 10-day challenge over. Woo, talk about a challenge. So if you really want to give yourself a go with trying to live in the solution rather than the problem, in your mind, you'll find that those fears and anxieties, you'll begin to work through them, and they won't have the same effects, which keeps us paralyzed and in a state of continual disturbance within ourselves that we can't be successful. I'm going to go ahead and take a call. If you have a question, press *6. If you have a question about anything that we've just talked about, just press *6. I'll be glad to take your call. Anybody with questions about fear and anxiety? Hopefully by now, all of you have received your superhero meditation CD. And the reason I included that as a part of changing our course is because it's imperative that we begin to teach our brains to be happy. We are the sole people that can really dictate and define ourselves and the experiences that we have. I mean, we definitely have the power of choice and be empowered. The problem is we let life and life situations bring us into a place where we don't remember that we are powerful, creative beings, that all we do is have to make a decision. When we're talking about overcoming fear and anxiety, I have to move on to creating new directions and opportunities. As I was talking about earlier, really defining where you want to make your opportunities and your changes. Do you want to change the way you think about your life? Do you want to create a new job function? That's where we begin to create new directions. Is first we begin to ask ourselves, what part of my life I don't like, so that I can begin to look at what I do like in my life and what I want to change. So begin to define what part of your life that you want to change, and begin to research. There's nothing more powerful. Anybody can do anything these days. If you want to learn how to be psychic, you can take a psychic class. If you want to go how to backpack across Europe and you want to explore and have freedom, you can do that too. If you want to learn how to carry and protect yourself, like Destiny was talking about, well, take a gun class, take a safety course. If you want to learn how to speak another language, speak another language. If you want to feel connected to God, find a church. See, define the area of life that you want to change and begin to move in that direction. All of us have a goal, and that is to feel whole and a part of this universe. And as we begin to discern that within ourselves, what part of me do I feel like is not connected? How do we begin to find that? All right, so as we are creating new directions, there's so many resources here. If you're working and you want to change areas in your life and you want to change your career, start looking at what color is your parachute. Look at those skills. There's so many informational pieces. It's not about, are you going to be successful? You will be successful if you've been getting an intuitive call to move into another direction. You'll be unsuccessful if you don't even try, right? So you got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, do some research, talk to people that have been successful, and begin to either volunteer in that field, see if you like it, see if you love it. But the point is that as we begin to create new opportunities within our minds, which means I always like to practice up what if. What if I could travel around and talk to people about their spiritual growth? If I could, I would create a network of loving, supportive people who help people get through hard times. That's the kind of thing that if you could, would you? So there's so many pieces of literature in the self-improvement field that you can pick one or two authors that you love and you like their focus and follow their guidance. Because and that's something you can do in the comfort of your own home. The point is will you? All right, so define what part that you want to change and get a plan, right? I've always had a plan on Mondays about what my eating plan is going to be for the week. I've always got something I'm working on. What in your life are you working on? Okay? Developing inner strength from your spirit. I got to tell you from the very start, if you're going to change your life, it's got to be a priority. Because the truth is that we have to be content and have a feeling of okayness within ourselves, regardless of any circumstances. You know, I had back surgery twice, and I had to go through several years of chronic pain every single day. And it was difficult for me to take care of myself and go to the grocery store and do that kind of thing. And I really focused on how can I, and at that point, the only thing I could do to be spiritual was keep my mouth shut, because I was uncomfortable. I was in pain. I had physical pain, and I wasn't so, enthusiastic about life. I was determined to feel better no matter what. And I got tired of hearing myself complain about it, so I just shut up. And that was one of the ways that I began to not spend negative energy on my life when I was dealing through that, and really find the right resources. And yes, was I frustrated? Oh, yes, especially after the second surgery, and I didn't get the relief that I needed. But the way we develop inner strength, we all have it. We got it when we were born. We were all given a spiritual power within us. It's what brought us through the birth canal. It's what will move us to the light when we lose a physical existence. The point in which, how do we bring that power, harness our inner light? That's what gives us the fortitude and the tenacity and the desire to grow in this life. And we will always have a spirit within us that no matter what our mind and body says, but that inner spirit will always kick us into gear and tell us to move forward, change our lives, move out of our house and get another one. The point is do we listen to it? Meditation is such a strong piece of learning how to develop our inner strength. One, we got to feel it. We got to stop long enough. And I'm a hyperactive person, so I'm one of those people that I had to make a point to unplug from the outside world for 5 or 10 minutes until I could really feel like what it was like to be still in my own skin. You know, whenever people are really busy in their life and they fill up every single moment, they may be avoiding depression or feelings of inadequacy and things that if you stop and let yourself resolve them, you won't be. A friend of mine used to say this, I'm running as fast as I can to keep up with where I'm at. Now that's how my internal thing was working. So I encourage you to, if you don't have a spiritual practice of some sort, whether you go to church, whether you go and meditate, whether you walk in nature, but there's got to be a way that you start to commune with your inner spirit so that you can, one, trust what you feel, follow the guidance, and let your spirit guide you into a happy, more fulfilling life. I'm just someone that likes to write to spirit. I like to read. I like to study spiritual philosophies. I have a consistent meditation practice. And because of that, that is my anchor. My spiritual power is my anchor into life. And I learned from I grew up with a strong fundamental Christian background, but I have learned from every kind of religion that there is so that I can take those articles from those religious pieces and see how they fit in my communion with my higher source. And so if you haven't got a spiritual practice, get one. For those of you that are interested, I did start a meditation boot camp, which is a spiritual practice. It is a discipline. It starts, I've got 10 spots left. Anyway, if you're interested, I just sent it out in the email, or you can email me about it. But developing your inner strength, that is the fuel that lights our spirit. And that's where we have to stop listening to people, what their expectations are. We have to stop listening to our ego that says we should be accomplished and we should be further than we are. The point is to start with where you're at, because wherever you're at today in your life, in any area of your life, is good enough. And then as we begin to start from that point, how do we move upward in our mind, in our spirit, and in our heart? I always like to use meditation to plan for success, because whenever I begin to think about what I want to create in my life, good relationships, healthy relationships, I want to have I want to contribute in a positive way to people's life. I always think about that, and I actually imagine myself doing that. In my mind, I actually see what it looks like, and it helps me prepare. So planning for success means you start talking in terms. So whenever I provided you guys the meditation, the superhero meditation, if you enjoy those affirmations and you actually begin to embrace them, maybe you just like one or two of them. You don't have to, get all of them, but if you pick one or two and you begin to let that be your mantra. When I first started in my work and I really took a risk and left my spiritual, and left corporate America, it wasn't anything I'd planned on doing or thought that I would do. I used to say, they're going to have to steal my badge and kick me out the door if I'm ever leaving, because there was a lot of security there and there was a lot of opportunity there. But whenever the Spirit calls for me to move on, I remember crying myself to sleep at night. But my mantra was, I'm surrounded by people that love and support me, and all is well. I've been successful at everything else I've done in my life. It may not be on other people's terms, but I have always made progress. And those became my mantras. And that gave me the fuel of thought that controlled my thinking and kept me from fear to help me move through changes in my life. All right, so there's a couple of people. I'm going to go ahead and run through our calls real quick. As we begin to move more into the discussion, I'm going to talk about one of the questions that I had. One of the ladies, Margot, I'm going to grab you real quick. Hi, Margot.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, I'm wonderful. Are you enjoying the call?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Thank you for submitting your question. I want to just mention that if you don't mind, I do want to ask just a couple of things about it as I'm going. Do you mind, or shall I not do that?
No, it's fine.
Margot sent a great question. How to be happy around people who have been hurtful or hateful towards us, yet they have to remain in our life. And you referred to family and coworkers, right?
Yes.
And how to reduce anxiety when you're around these same people. I love that question, because interpersonal relationships are what keep us up at night. Mm-hmm. They make us feel great, or they make us feel like crap, So it's a great question, is how do I begin to change that? So I'm just going to give you some thoughts that I wrote down that I mentioned. There's no way I could have changed that guy. He was already wired funky from the get-go, right? Mm-hmm. What I had to do was just accept him as an unloving person. I didn't try to change it. I didn't try to people please him. I didn't try to make him like me anymore. But once I really began to do that, I began to get free of the expectation that I had to get along. I was cordial. I was friendly. But let me assure you, I did not go to dinner with him unless I had to. I always say that we as spiritual leaders and people, we have to be responsible to look where our own judgment is. So I would say that look where you're maybe critical first, like I was, with blame. And some of that was blame, but some of it was just his personality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So look at where you might be holding past interactions that maybe had nothing to do with you. And if they did hurt you, I always look at it when people actually hurt me, I look at it within me that there's something in me that triggered that made me feel insecure. And how do I begin to nurture that part of me that feels like I'm not enough when people hurt me? Now, that's different than physical harm. You know what I mean? Like Destiny was talking about, where somebody actually, throws a punch at you and hits you. But words are just as painful as punches.
Yeah.
I would avoid taking things personal. And the way I began to do that is I began to see them as different people, not connected to me. And I tried to get an understanding on where they were. And I will tell you, there was a strong spiritual practice that someone had me do. One of my grandmothers, she and I did not get along. And obviously, she she didn't like girls. She was a grandma that liked boys, and she pretty much made that known, right? in how she talked to people and how she treated us and all of that thing. You know, I always felt like that she was somebody that didn't like me, and she didn't. So there was some truth to that. But what I began to do is, if I was going to forgive her, what would I forgive her for? And I just began to get that. It was a writing process that someone gave me to do. And it really, you know, it stemmed back from, and it actually started with my mom. If I was going to forgive my mom, you know, what would I forgive her for? And I just wrote that down. If I was going to forgive her mom, based on what I knew about her, what would I forgive her mom for? And I really began to get that out of my system. And I began to see that those women really were operating with the best understanding that they had based on where they came from. And they would be that way today whether I was in the picture or not. And that helped me separate myself from those experiences so that I could be someone that didn't feel the hit every time they came in the house. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So see what part of you might be insecure and begin to send love to that area. If you don't feel wanted, needed, and loved, begin to look at where you can feel wanted, needed, and loved on yourself. It's kind of like the boss scenario that I was talking about. If you don't feel recognized, you know, if you don't feel like your boss recognizes you, well, do you recognize the abilities that you do? You know, when you turn in projects, do you say, I feel really good about this. I know this is one of my gifts. And, you know, you turn it in. And so as we begin to talk more positively about who we are, some of that stuff, that drama that goes on with other people, it goes somewhere else. We didn't change them. We didn't ask them to change. But we as people that coordinated in that life began to make those changes from within ourselves so that whether they're having a bad day or not, and if you need to leave the room, especially if it's a husband, then leave the room. You know, when you get over that, I'll be back, but I'm going to go do something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So begin to take better care of yourself, meaning in those situations. Nurture, claim your power back, decide what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and then move on with that. And sometimes you just got to deal with some people who are just mean. Some people aren't nice, and if they are a part of your work, avoid them, but recognize that within them they have a soul sickness as well, that they don't feel connected, that they don't feel loved, that they have issues as well, and whatever made them that way is really not your responsibility to fix, but how we respond to them is how we fix that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is what I've been trying to do. But
and I got to tell you, there was a book called Living with Joy by Sanaya Roman that really talked about particular scenarios, but, you know, especially between husbands and wives. You know, if you're looking for a problem in someone, I guarantee you're going to find it. I always say find a way to find something that does work. Maybe they have a good work ethic and they show up to work every day, you know, instead of going, oh, they're here again. Well, at least they show up, you know. So start with one thing that you can find about a person, and maybe they're just the person that needs compassion. So begin to look for those things in that situation, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. All right, let me go ahead and go through here, and I'm going to go with, let's have a look. All right, Joan, are you with me? Hey, Joan. Oh, wait, hang on. I think my computer just froze up. Give me a second. All right, Joan, I'm here. I'm sorry. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well tonight, thank you.
Anything I can help you with?
No, I'm like most of the rest. I'm learning just from listening to some of the things you've been saying and trying to point myself in some right directions. So,
yeah, you know, I always, just so you know, I just hear beautiful singing around you. I hope at some point that you'll start singing and humming to yourself, because your guides say that it helps you calm down a bit.
Music is it soothes me well.
I tell you, it really does. And it really gets you in that place of the Om state, you know, where people are talking about that they want to Om. I just hear that all around you. So, you know, that's really, and you've got just some creative side of you that it's time to start exploring. So I hope you enjoy that process.
I love it, and I'll always have it with me.
Thank you so much. Have a great night. All right. Okay, so I don't see who this is, so I'm just going to pull this bridge off here. Let me make sure that, hey, this is Jennifer. Who's this? Hi. It just shows that you're a caller on my call. I don't know who this is. May I ask your first name? All right, so you can't hear me. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead. If you, is there anything?
Is Sue.
Hey, Sue. Which Sue?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, is this Sue in Lindale?
It is indeed.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad you're here. I couldn't see the call. Did you enjoy the call tonight?
I am enjoying it, and the only thing, I was thinking when you were talking about the past and stuff, for me, my high school years weren't like that, traumatic or whatever. I wasn't bullied or anything, but it still affects me in my life today. I think sometimes if I were watching Dr. Phil, I would go on that show, but I wouldn't want this person to see me or that person or whatever. And these are people in my past who probably don't even know my name or whatever, but, I guess the far-reaching results, of that, have always kind of tempered my life. And it makes no sense, but it is something that, I always come back to. And I just wonder why or how I can, let go of something like that just seems so kind of far-fetched.
Well, what that tells me, okay, you remember when I was talking about look at a situation and see what you learned from it? So if you were gonna think of a one-line statement, what did high school bring you? Right? So what kind of skills did you learn in high school? Some of those could be good skills. Some of those could not be skills. Like, for example, in my life, I learned really early on, you don't talk about situations that are going on. It was never said, but that was what I walked away from that with. Does that make sense? Every time I told somebody what I was doing, it was like I was going against what I was taught. But for me, it's what has given me, it's what has been my asset in my life. So when you think about, and you might meditate on it a bit, is when I left high school, what did I leave with?
Try to find something positive as opposed to the negative feeling where, I always, kind of tried to stay under the radar so that I didn't, I felt obviously probably inadequate and, tried to stay below the radar.
Well, and what I felt like when you were talking about is that there was a need for recognition for you, but there was always a fear to let your light shine. And so for whatever that reason is, because the truth is when you're looking at adolescence, there's not any kindness, consideration. It is not a supportive network. It is usually in a group of people that are cliquish and that people are felt isolated and apart from. So you probably need to, your own spirit probably kept you from a lot of turmoil and ridicule by keeping your inner light on, but that's not a tool that will work for you today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like you learned how to stay under the radar because that was what your emotional span was. You learned that people weren't nice because you saw it with other people. You learned that even if you make a good grade, it doesn't mean you're popular. So there's a lot. I would really just kind of make a list and meditate on it. What did I learn from our high school? And I would look at the pluses and the minuses. And so that you can look at what part of that still runs my motor today, and then how do I get a plan to do the opposite?
Sounds good.
All right, take care. Thank you, Susan. All right, let's see. Oh, is this Art? Hi, this is Jennifer. I want to make sure I said that right. Is this Kim? Kim, can you hear me okay?
Which Kim?
Oh, you. You're
Me,
Kim.
Okay.
Because I can only talk to one person at a time, so I'm just checking in. Did you enjoy the call?
I did. I thought it was very enlightening.
Well, I'm glad because, man, I had to put it all out on the line. I was like, there's no way to explain that stuff unless you just hear it, you know? Is there anything I can help you with?
No, but I did find it helpful because there were a lot of things that kind of resonated with me that I thought, okay, I can understand that. So
Good.
it's definitely beneficial.
Think about getting some more education because I see that around you, okay?
Okay.
All right. And it feels like just you learning new academic stuff, new schooling stuff, and there could be some renewal classes or something coming up, but I see it around you. So have fun with it, Kim.
Okay, I'll try.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Jennifer. Who's this?
Mitzi?
I'm sorry. Did you say Mitzi?
Yes,
Oh, you're in Conroe.
Yes,
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the call tonight. I was just giving everybody an opportunity. Did you have a question or anything that I could help you with?
Well, actually, I didn't get started until later, so I didn't get to hear everything. But right now, I'm kind of going through a quandary as to what I should do. I just don't feel like I fit in at work. They're bringing in a lot of younger kids, and I just feel out of place.
Okay.
So
So a couple of things. That's a very that can have an easy fix. Okay. If you can practice not comparing yourself to other people. Do you remember what? And I think you kind of came in late, but in the call we talked about earlier about anxiety.
Yes.
And fears.
I just love it. Mm-hmm.
And so one of the, there's a couple of spiritual practices that if we will do on a regular basis, meaning that we remind ourselves to do by repeating them in our mind. For example, what they think of you doesn't make up who you are. 2, when you see yourself comparing yourself to other people, immediately refrain from that and focus on how you can be helpful in that particular situation. And it might be that in this situation, you just need to focus back on your work and stop worrying about other people's thoughts and feelings. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because you definitely are a woman that's got a lot of good experience, but I just see you kind of focusing on others instead of really focusing on what your strengths are and what you offer. It's not important for you to feel a part of, but if you'll be mindful, you go, oh, I'm comparing and competing again. There's an idea that I tried to practice a long time ago that a friend of mine gave me, because all this stuff I've learned and practices, there's no place for competition in God's world.
Right.
And if you're a spiritual person and you're living where we are all beings trying to, love and be loved, which we are in this world, just people have a funky way of getting all their needs met, is part of our responsibilities as spiritual beings. One is to mind our own business, which means let people have their own opinions and ideas, but stay firm with our integrity. 2, when we find ourselves comparing and competing, let me assure you, we're always going to end up short. Seriously, that's one of the best things you can do. And sometimes the best way to stop comparing and competing is like when you're in the office, just stay focused on the task. That's a kind of an easy thing. When I worked at a casino once, and there were these women that had been there a long time, right? And they were always gossiping about what was going on. And I never really wanted to be a part of the gossip part anyway, because it never felt positive. So what I did is I just focused on being the best employee that I could be at that point, which was completing the job functions that I was hired to do. And that when any of those women came and asked me for help, I was friendly and I was cordial, but I didn't have to get into that mode of trying to people please them just so they would like me. They're going to like me because of who I am and the kind of person I am, not because of something they can get from me. Does that make sense?
Okay. Uh-huh.
So you might want to make yourself a little sticky note, right? There's no place for competition in God's world. So if you're living a person that believes that, then you know that that's something that you can change. And when you feel yourself doing that, because it's going to be a habit that you have to change, is you might put your hands over your face and go, oh, yeah, what they're thinking is none of my business. My job is to stay focused on my business at hand, which is my actions and my attitudes, not what they're doing. And that's what will empower you instead of losing energy by looking at other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but on this, I'm thinking that I'm so inadequate. I'm not. I don't feel like an asset. It's
okay. Well,
I'm not competing. It's just I feel. I don't even know how to put it into words.
Well, I think you said it, because what's happening is you're comparing it what you can do and what they can do, and you're seeing them that they're doing it better.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's still comparing and competing, but let me assure you, we all like when we're looking at, career and career functions, what is it that you want to develop and that you need to develop? Not because you want to keep your job, but because you want to learn how to do it. Is it a computer function? Is it a program? Is it a people function? Is it that you need to be more out and talking about what you want? There are always ways to learn, because truthfully, people are always going to have different sets than everybody else. But let me assure you, you are hired there for a reason. So I would give yourself your own assessment, meaning that this is what I do well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I feel like time management could be something that you add that you might need a little improvement on.
Okay.
Just a little time management. And that could be because you're looking at your stuff 2 or 3 times, and taking a little bit longer to do it because you want it to be perfect.
Okay.
You got the superhero meditation, CD, so definitely try to practice that really kind of, and because it's something that's chronic for you, it's something that you're waking up and you're having to deal with, rechange your energy about your work is, what can I learn? How can I be helpful? If you'll focus on those 2 functions, what can I learn and how can I be helpful? All the other part of what do they think of me? Where am I falling short? All of that loses its fearful feelings because you'll be focused on what can I learn and how can I be helpful? These are the things I'm good at.
Okay.
Try to practice that meditation. I really would like to see you do it like 3 days in a row. Seriously.
Okay.
Just so you could feel the difference between the way your mind thinks before and where you end up. Because that's what a meditative practice with affirmations are, is that we begin to find something within us, within our heart. Like, say, for example, you're a loving and strong person. You've always been that way. And you've always been someone that people can depend on. That's the truth in you, correct?
Yeah.
So let that be where you start. I am a loyal person. I am always there when people or when I'm needed. Let that be a faith. Let that be your starting affirmation. Let that be enough in how you build a better feeling of what you offer in this world. Not just at work, but as a person, as a being, as a spiritual power.
Okay.
Okay? That will help you begin to shift from fear, get a solution for, I need to change my thinking about this because they're not going to change, but I need to change because I'm feeling like crap and I don't even want to go to work. And it's like I always tell whenever these kinds of things happen, I used to say out loud when my mind would start doing stuff like that, I'd go, who's lying? Somebody's lying. They're telling me I'm not good enough. And I would say it out loud. I go, oh, that stopped. Because within us, we are loving, powerful beings, and it doesn't matter what we do or how we are. We are beings that are lovable, that are enough, and that we can improve our skill set, our personal skills, by looking to improve that. But that's not going to make us a better human being. That's just going to make us more skillful because we're already enough.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in. I'm glad that you were here today, Mitzi, and many blessings to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.